Call the meeting to order, please. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Long is not arrived just yet. Councilmember Shepherd Ryan is here. Councilmember Saul.
Here.
I'm sorry, no problem. I can't hear. Vice Mayor Jankowski.
I am here, thank you.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
The agenda is posted 72 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, Crow Library, and the Recreation Department. The agenda is also posted on the city's website. The city welcomes public input. Members of the public may address the city council by completing a public comment card and giving it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. At this time, the public may address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to state law, the city may not discuss or take action on issues that are not on the meeting's agenda. We also reserve the right to place time limits on the duration of comments. Staff may be asked to follow up on such items. I'd now like to ask City Clerk Baker to explain how the public comment will work for this meeting.
For each item on the agenda, there will be time for public comment. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes and will be timed by staff. We will accept comments in 3 ways. We will take in-person comments for each item. Please fill out a speaker card and turn it in to me if you wish to speak on an item. We will also accept comments via email sent to cityclerk@cityofsanmarino.org. The email address is also found on the agenda. These will then be read into the record. We must receive these emails before the public comment period for the particular item ends. The comments may be summarized if necessary to limit it to under 3 minutes. We will then ask for comments from our Zoom participants. When we ask for public comments via Zoom, there are 2 ways you can let us know you would like to speak. First, you can use the raise hand feature, which is a button that's found by clicking on participants and then clicking on raise hand on the bottom right side of the screen. Please do not use this feature until we have asked for public comment, or else we may not see it or know which item you are asking to speak on. As a second option, you can send a message using the chat box saying you would like to speak on this particular agenda item. Comments will be accepted only until the end of the public comment period for that item.
Thank you. Does anyone present wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, does anyone electronically like to speak at this time?
There's nobody wishing to speak at this time.
Thank you. Then we'll move right into new business. Item number 1, discussion regarding code enforcement procedures. Can we please have the presentation by Director Cervantes?
Yes, thank you, Council, Mayor and Council. Staff would like to take this opportunity to showcase the efforts of the Code Enforcement Division, as well as provide some details regarding the re-envisioning plan for our division. Can we post up the PowerPoint? The first, I'd like to highlight the key staff for our division. They include Victor Aleman, who's our code enforcement manager. We have Mark Aguilar, who's our part-time code enforcement officer. We do have a vacancy in place now, although we did conduct second interviews yesterday, and I believe that we have 2 strong candidates available to us. And lastly, of course, myself, I also perform code enforcement duties when needed. Within the last year, or past year, I have developed policies and procedures for the division to help assist with daily operations. Such policies and procedures provide guidance to our code enforcement officer with respect to flexibility of hours, citation procedures, notice of violation procedures, gaining voluntary compliance.
I'm sorry, Director. Apparently, the city's Zoom is muted. People are not able to hear. We're on the live line. Okay. You talk a little.
Okay. And the other more important issues related to our policies and procedures, of course, is rights of access, because there are legal implications to this, and most importantly, timely compliance efforts of our division. The division also utilizes a GoGov app or mobile application to help assist staff in creating cases, case management, as well as follow-up inspections. This is also a great tool for the public to use, as several members of the public have already started to use the mobile application. Moreover, we've created internal goals and objectives to help improve our responsiveness when the use of this app is used by the public. The biggest highlight, of course, of this report is to show the council, showcase the council our re-envisioning plan for our division. I'm unable to click over. Just click over. There we go. So, again, the biggest highlight here is to include the re-envisioning plan. Such plan includes a vast amount of cooperation efforts, messaging, public education, innovation, and internal improvements into the system. Our external and internal strategy for cooperation has resulted in teaming up with neighborhood watch programs and attending their various meetings. The intent of this is to create awareness and to show the neighborhood watch groups that we are a resource for them in their neighborhood. We've also teamed up with the police department, the fire department, and public works departments to help provide assistance in violations, such as helping the division with vacant housing or identifying that as vacant housing, fire hazards, parkway issues, and to assist with after-hours coverage. So essentially, we're utilizing each department in their subject matter expertise to assist our division. With regards to education and messaging, the division will begin utilizing the various media outlets provided to showcase specific issues within the community, provide messaging such as the example provided to the council tonight. This is what it looks like in color. I only did one version in color, but there's one in front of you. There'll be more of these to come. In addition to the messaging and reports with the neighborhood watch folks, we're looking to provide reports to council similar to the methods of policing fire at the regular meetings. Lastly, internal improvements that I believe will help the division become more efficient include best practices for managing cases and looking to amend certain codes to help improve or enhance the tools that are at our side. The goals of the internal strategy is to, of course, stay consistent in how we enforce the codes, and we enforce the codes across the board in a fair manner, and that's to avoid sort of selective enforcement by our team. With respect to staffing, I do strongly believe that additional help is needed. We do have a vacancy in place now, and it has resulted in my position having to go out and conduct surveys for vacant housing and various other types of enforcement opportunities. I believe that is necessary to meet the needs of our public at this moment. More so than not, as I mentioned, I find myself taking that role, and it's taking me away from some of the requirements or duties that I have upon my plate. And certainly, with that being said, I'm not meeting my expectations if I'm out doing code enforcement. So it does create a burden and has resulted in a negative impact with respect to the workload. Although I do love field work, and I, of course, started doing field work when I started here, my position is not with respect to field work. It's, of course, managing and directing the department from a global perspective. And so that's, in saying that, I'd like the council to consider the opportunity for additional help within the division that will help sort of the workload that we're facing at the moment. And so with that said, that is sort of a brief snapshot as to our re-envisioning. Of course, there are a lot more details in the report, a lot more details that will soon come. There's the procedures and policies guidebook that I provided that is a draft form. It is being reviewed by our city attorney's office, also being reviewed by our city prosecutor's office for completeness. And so that will become an official document of the department fairly soon. So with that said, I open up for questions.
Thank you, Director Cervantes. Are there any questions from council? Dr. Wong?
Yes, thank you for your work. I really appreciate it. So what kind of help are you looking for?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, the team is we have a manager, we have a full-time code enforcement officer that's vacant at the moment. We have a part-time code enforcement officer. And so I fill in, whether we're fully staffed or not, I fill in some of the roles. And because of that, as I mentioned, I can't get to the duties that I'm required to get to. And so the help that I'm looking for is likely another body to help fill the role that I'm currently filling.
So, but you say you already had any interviews, right?
We had interviews, I had interviews yesterday for seconds to fill the current vacancy. And so that would bring us to full staff as we're currently budgeted, which is a manager, a full-time code enforcement officer, and a part-time code enforcement officer.
Can we use volunteers like our senior citizens?
We can certainly look into that. I know we have a procedure and a policy for volunteers. Of course, there are some question marks with respect to using volunteers during this pandemic. And that certainly could pose a challenge, but certainly we can explore that. But again, cautious with that with respect to COVID and pandemic.
And maybe after the pandemic, we can look into that. And, you know, we have so many citizens that are very eager to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Toll, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Director. It's very enlightening to see us move because a lot of times some of the biggest complaints we get is code enforcement. Is there a day, and I will start this by saying, in my experience, most of the complaints I hear are Saturdays and Sundays, where someone is illegally constructing something, someone is ripping out a tree. Is there a day in which you, as the director, see most of these type of complaints happen?
Most of the complaints that we've seen are the examples that you just used during the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, as well as during the early mornings where contractors are starting before the hours is allowed, which is 7 p.m. or sorry, 7 a.m. And so we've had to pivot somewhat with our staff and start our part-time code enforcement officer early in the morning to catch those folks. We did so with construction and also with leaf blower violations. Our part-time code enforcement officer does work weekends, but because he's part-time, we're limited to his hours for the year. And so there's a certain amount of lack of flexibility for his use, but we do have him out there during the weekends to help with exactly what your example is. He has reported back saying that the violations during the weekends are not so much as those in the mornings for contractors starting way too early and leaf blower issues as well.
How successful does it go out? I use it. I love being able to send a photograph, especially given my advanced age, where then I will know where the address is, what the condition is. Has it been a successful use? How often is it used and how well publicized is it?
Well, I will admit that we had internally a poor response rate from our department towards individuals who reported the app. We closed the gap with that. There were some issues with the type of communication that came to us and vice versa. So we're able to utilize the technology in a better way so that we can respond as soon as we receive an external report via the app. As soon as we've made that adjustment or that pivot, we've seen an improvement with our response times. And so we have internal strategies that include the manager and myself responding to those. When you submit a request via the app, both myself and the manager receive an immediate email through Outlook that there's a report issued externally, and we respond to that. So since we've had to pivot on our policies, it has improved the system as of late.
How many complaints are received through the, regarding code enforcement?
I would say this past Wednesday, we received 5 within an hour. That's unusual. We probably receive about 2 a week through the app.
Okay. What my concern with the manual, the procedure manual, is that we need to be more detailed on what the priorities are with respect to code enforcement problems. Can you give some examples as to if you had 5 issues that fall under code enforcement, what type of issue would come first and what type of issue would come last? Because my fear is that if you put in a complaint, you call and then you hear that the code enforcement is not taking care of another problem, you're going to feel slighted.
Right.
Unless they're aware of the priorities. So I want to be more specific. Can you give me a list of specific examples of type of priorities you're
Yes, so the priorities would be public safety related, and so that relates to construction sites mostly. So that's at the higher level of responses. And down to the very bottom, we have probably an appearance issue. One example would be a parkway, brown lawn type of situation, where it's sort of at the very bottom of our priority list. Not to say that we don't respond in a timely manner to those issues, but if we had an issue of public safety related to a construction site, and at the same time receiving one about a parkway appearance, we're likely to respond to the public safety issue first before we respond to the brown lawn issue.
And I'm hoping that we can be more specific in those type of
Got it.
examples, because what you just gave me makes sense. Thank you.
Ms. Shepherd Romney, any questions?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to say I so appreciate the efforts of Director Spontes and your team over 2020. I think it was great that we often saw people around and stopping for various incidents, and the residents also said they were responsive and timely, so I appreciate that. I do think, so I wanted to thank Mark Aguilar and Victor Ullman and Ralph Freeman, though Ralph's no longer with us. And to your point about the go out, my concern that following on Councilmember Talton, I'm wondering, and this, your effort here involves more pushing out things on social media. And I think that our community probably doesn't, some people use go out, but probably the vast majority still make a phone call to the police, unfortunately, or directly to City Hall, and they get directed a bunch of different places. That is by far my understanding of the vast majority of people who come to me saying, I had a problem, I tried to get help, I don't. So I can show them, well, you got to download the Go apps, and then go to the site, take your picture, report it, and that's how things will get handled. But that's going to still take a number of months, if not the rest of the year, to really get that in people's minds, because most people still go to the call first when they see something. And so I'm wondering how you're going to put those two, the existing mindset of most of our population, or a lot of our population, and then really push, instead of adding more, like now they can, now you're going to send things out on social media and things like that. I'm just worried about even just focusing our efforts for a while on getting that go out really prevalent in our community. So people walk, people find people are all over town. It's a great thing, but we got to get 70% of those complaints coming through that, I think, to be successful before, having another social media campaign about something else is my thought.
No,
So I wanted to know how you were going to put those together.
And I totally agree with that. And I apologize for Councilmember Talton not answering these questions as far as marketing of the app. That's exactly what's going to take place as far as our messaging. That's the whole intent of being part of the neighborhood watch groups, is we attend those meetings virtually, of course, and this is a very new process for us. We've never been in front of these groups. The more groups that we can be in front of, the more we can market, use the app. The app is a great tool for us. In fact, we use it internally to create cases because it makes it more efficient. When it's widely used, it does help the staff tremendously in our case management. And so I agree that the first step in terms of our branding and marketing of this new re-envisioning is to include utilization of the tools that we have, and the highest tool we have is the app.
Okay, that's great, because I would like that, and if you have a town hall, I don't know where you're, I know there's so many town halls, and again, sometimes low attendance, depending, especially in the Zoom world that we're in now, but even to have it out there and uploaded so somebody can watch it. I think people are interested in this topic, and as we all know,
Right.
It's near and dear to many residents, because it encompasses so much, right? Whether it's actual code enforcement or parks and public work or public safety, it's all involved in one place. And I was excited to see that your efforts are continuing in the cooperation with police and fire, but I did want to ask you how much of that and involves the dispatch, because I've often heard issues about people calling into police and the dispatch saying that's not us, wait till Monday, particularly of some of the situations on the weekends. And so I'm trying to figure out if people do call, is the San Marino PD dispatch going to then put something in the go out so then you're aware, or the manager's aware of, and whoever the part-timer is, or something can be done? Just what is it, have you worked out a process for the weekends, because people will probably still call the police or the fire department.
Yeah, over the last few years, Chief Encounter and I have been in communications as far as how to develop an after-hours program. And for a long time now, the police personnel after hours respond to incidents. And what they do is they actually, in fact, do something better than the app, is they respond to the incident and they provide us a very detailed report of the situation. And we received an email from watch commanders, mostly, providing us what occurred at the incident, and we respond via that report. We can use that report, in fact, even though code enforcement was not on site to visually see the violations, we can use the report to generate a notice of violation. And so that type of cooperation is what I meant in terms of the internal cooperation, is that the chief and I have an understanding of how we're going to utilize that department to assist code enforcement.
Right,
What-
but I'm thinking of the scenario of somebody cutting down a tree.
Sure, yeah.
If you report it on a Sunday at 9 a.m., and I do, or somebody does, a go out, report, but then follows it up with a phone call to the police because nobody comes out and they're still seeing it across the street or whatever. What's the chain of getting somebody out there while the action, I know the police are going to come out at some point and do a report, and I think that's very valuable, and you can use it for the prosecution, but I'm talking about stopping the bad actor
Right.
at the point. Is that possible?
That is possible, and in fact, that's my understanding of what's happening right now is during the after hours when code enforcement is not on site, the watch commander will receive the call and to dispatch or to essentially send an officer out to the site to stop the work. One example of what we've changed recently is periodically every week or two, we send the watch commander our tree permit list, which gives the watch commander a list of properties that receive permits to remove trees. In the past, they would visit a site on a complaint about a tree being removed and not understanding what the scenario is. So now that the watch commander has a list of our permit history, they can respond to the site, ask for the permit, see the list, and respond appropriately. But to answer your other question specifically, is the PD will respond, or the police officer will respond, provide a report to the city, send myself and Victor an email, and we respond that way.
All right, thank you.
But specifically, our officer will stop work if a permit is not seen in that list that we provide them.
Great, and I think that's a huge improvement, and I
Right.
congratulate you on that. My last question is, when you asked about staffing and a change or an addition to staffing, are you envisioning another part-time person to help in those off hours? Or are you thinking of, I just was wondering what you envision, or if you, planned out how another employee would fit into the current, once you get the open position filled, what else do you think you?
Yeah, what I need, and I wasn't specific on the question asked earlier as far as whether it's full-time or part-time, I need, or would like to see another body out in the field. I need another field officer, for lack of a better way of saying it. The goal here, of course, is a full-time individual, because a part-time individual is limited to the hours, and I can speak to experience in Mark's time being limited in the hours for the annual period, that he has to sort of step back a little bit because he doesn't have the time to do that. A full-time individual will be an immense benefit to the department because of the amount of work that they can generate.
All right, thank you, those are my questions, I appreciate it, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Sure do, thank you. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this, and two parts of it really excite me. It feels more, to use a lack of a better term, that there's a partnership with PD and PPW, and that is exciting. And the other part that I really like is you're allowing your officers to become more familiar with their part of town, and that sort of gives them a glide around as things are going on, knowing where there may be some hot spots. So I wanted to commend you on that idea. Along with, this can certainly tie into the plan that you have with the vacant houses, so that when you go out and check, oh, by the way, you're a nuisance also, which is a code enforcement issue. As that goes down, hopefully these kinds of things will also decrease. I'd like to move on to reporting. To go where Councilwoman Shepherd-Romney had started, when we see something live, it's really hard, A, to know, and then B, if we do know, to have faith in the app that if you're observing something in real time, that somebody somewhere is immediately being notified. I would strongly recommend having some tool, and I have no idea what that would be, to get that 1 or 2 sentence message to the reporter. Thanks for your report, we're working on it. But the most important piece that will keep residents engaged is to close the loop with the reporter after you have investigated it. And I know in the background that I came from, you know, there's 2 or 3 ways you can share the outcome. You don't need to go into all the details. It's been addressed, or upon investigation, we found there wasn't a code violation. But to always get back to the reporter, that will give them faith in you. And we will always have a group of citizens who just don't do apps, but are concerned. So I think we need some parallel marketing tools. But I can't stress enough from my end, acknowledge the report and close the loop, because sometimes people just don't know what's going on. I'd like to move on to hours. So currently, aside from your part-time person, presuming you are back up to 2 full-time, are those 440s, 4 10-hour days?
No.
They're 5?
They're
540s?
5 days, yeah.
Okay. And are those schedules pretty set, or do they change?
They can change depending on the need.
And the reason I'm asking this again, I think we really need to beef up consumer confidence. And if we can advertise that there are folks from your division during these hours always available for you, but for you to please know that in off hours, we've got you covered this other way. I just really want to build confidence in the community, because like Councilwoman, I too hear from people who don't feel that the matter was addressed when it may have been. But we just need to let them know, hey, we've always got you covered. The other thing I wanted to bring up, of course, your idea of the manual is wonderful. I think there's always more tweaking that can be done with that. But I think internally, a rigorous, both initial and ongoing training program would be important. And that would be probably for all employees, because I was on a bus trip through the city and somebody said, when do I need a permit to trim my trees? Later on, when we move on to that, just particularly department heads and relevant staff to know the 30 most common questions in the city and to be able to respond to them. We wouldn't expect staff to know the manual inside out, but I think it would be helpful. And if it would help, I think even bringing in the Public Safety Commission to really review the rollout, I think this is an excellent step forward, and to give their input with both the manual and educating the community, and their input on the reporting process and looping back. I just think this can become a really good program, but it will definitely need some work, so we can ultimately move from being reactive to proactive. I'm just about done. I'll be one. I think I've covered my major points, and I'm excited, and hopefully this will be something that is in its first year reiterated as you're learning more, but build confidence within the community, I think, is a crucial step. And other than that, I'm excited. Thank you.
I don't know if this is a question or maybe a suggestion in terms of your staffing. You know, my instincts are with the COVID environment, the community services is a little light on work and maybe heavy on staff. So I'm wondering if you don't consider for a 3-month pilot program to reassign someone from community services to your code enforcement, just to see what type of a benefit there might be, so that when we get to the budgeting cycle for the next year, you'll have a foundation from which to, you know, ask for additional resources because of the, you know, proof of the demo. We'd like to open this up for public comments. Do we have any comments electronically? Since I don't see any people physically?
There's no public comments submitted and nobody requesting to speak this
Great,
time.
thank you. I'd like to bring this back to council for discussion. Do we have any comments? Gretchen, do you have any comments?
No, just thank you to your department. I think this is excellent, and I would move to receive and file.
Mr. Dahl?
I would second that motion. I appreciate all the hard work we put into this, and I thank you for what our comments are.
Thank you. Dr. Wong?
Yes, I think this is very necessary, you know, in our community. We do need these code enforcers, so that way we can make sure that obviously the city will remain the way it is. And I was trying to look for that app on the website. I couldn't find any link. If you can put a link on there, you know, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I've made all my comments and excited. Thank you.
I have no comments. Is there a motion?
There was a motion by Councilmember Shepherd-Romney, and it was seconded by Councilmember Schultz, so I will move to a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd-Romney?
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jacobowski?
Yes.
Mayor Udi?
Yes.
Thank you, the motion passes.
I'd like to move to item number 2, the approval of a resolution adopting the salary schedule. Can we please have the presentation from Human Resources Manager Pilch?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In front of you today for your consideration is the adoption of Resolution 2103, adoption of the salary schedule. Many of the salaries on the salary schedule were approved this time last year through the union contracts and management agreement. The proposed changes to the salary schedule is that of many of our city's part-time positions. Part-time employees account for roughly 1/3 of city staff. Most of our part-time positions serve our residents directly in our library and in recreation. Part-time employees also provide various support in our police department, city manager's office, parks and public works department, and community development department. As you may recall, back in 2016, Governor Jerry Brown signed Senate Bill 3, which put into place increases to minimum wage. Under SB 3, the minimum wage increases incrementally until the year 2022, when it will be $15 an hour. This year, the minimum wage has increased from $13 an hour to $14 an hour. As has been mentioned to Council in the December 11, 2019 staff report, staff needed to conduct a study to provide a long-term solution to address issues caused by the increases to the minimum wage. Staff has completed the study and provided a recommendation that will ensure our classifications are in compliance with state law, address compaction issues, and make our part-time salaries more competitive in comparison to similar agencies in the area. The proposed salary changes will cause salaries and related benefit expenses to increase approximately $132,000 over the last 6 months of the fiscal year. However, at this time, no additional budget appropriations are requested, primarily due to salary savings resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. These proposed salary changes will be included as part of next year's operating budget. I would also like to mention that during the study, it came to my attention that the salary for our part-time Library 1 staff was actually higher than that of their full-time equivalent. With this in mind, and for other reasons outlined in the staff report, I recommend that City Council align the full-time salaries with the part-time salaries by putting them all on this one proposed salary schedule. Be aware that if Council was to approve aligning part-time classifications to their full-time counterpart, it would reduce the salary schedules of 2 incumbents in the Library 1 classification. It is for this reason that I also propose that City Council Y-rate the salaries of these positions. This Y-rating would freeze the salaries until which time that they fall within the salary range of the Library 1 classification. which will occur July 1st of this year. I am available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd Roman, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. And it has to do with this. Can you please explain again, thank you for your report and for all the work that it took to do this and also for the extra work after our conversation earlier this week. And just need some further explanation as to the library, is it library clerk positions? Because I know I think we have a 1, 2, and 3 category. Do we have any library 1?
Maybe you're thinking about the library, the librarian 1, not the clerk, the librarian 1. We have a librarian 1, librarian 2, and librarian 3.
And, well, okay, so if I could direct you to library clerk, we have a library clerk 3, I'm now on 42 of 54, toward the bottom, the second to the bottom. And then we have on page 43 of 54, toward the bottom of that smaller list, fourth up, it says library clerk. And so I was
I see what you're saying.
I was trying to put those together and figure out how this fits in, and also because you gave me the supplemental document. And I'm worried about the compaction issue as we discussed earlier, as we do this, whatever we want to call it. I know there's different language going on, but to understand how the positions of the various departments, a layout for those that work there. I think that's important for all of our employees.
I understand your question. Thank you. As far as because it's kind of a title issue at this point, and what has occurred because the minimum wage has continued to increase over the years, it has actually pushed the library clerk 1 and library clerk 2 almost to the same level. I went out and I did classification studies on all the recreation department classifications, and determined there really wasn't much of a difference between the library clerk 1 and library clerk 2. Now that being said, moving forward with, because it's kind of weird having a library clerk and then a library clerk 3.
Right.
However, right now in the CEA, the city employee's contract, it is listed as library clerk 3. So I'm not looking to open that up at this time, but in the future, that will be something we may want to move to, maybe even calling it like a senior library clerk or something that will align more correctly title-wise.
Thank you. Okay, so that helps. So there is, and we only have those 2 positions currently active, if you will.
Correct.
Okay, and that's what you were talking about in that regard. Thank you. And then the other issue I had was, and this has to do with the police cadet position that we have had historically, and I don't know if we have anybody there right now. Is that's also was subject to your salary survey?
That is correct.
And so that wasn't just a minimum wage issue, it was if you will, a competitive, or trying to fill the position and make it competitive in the local marketplace.
Yeah, I conducted a salary study, and in that salary study, it came a little bit above the mean. I brought it just a little bit above the mean for that position.
And I was curious, I don't know if it's listed here, but what cities, or how did you go about, or what's the basis of the salary study? I think that would be helpful for us to know as council members, but also the community to know where we're looking, and even the employees, where we're comparing ourselves to, if you will.
Certainly. The cities that we have compared ourselves traditionally here at the city are Alhambra, Arcadia, Monrovia, San Gabriel, Sierra Madre, and South Pasadena.
All right, thank you very much. That's all I have at this time, but I appreciate, I know this took a lot of effort, and I appreciate you getting back to me also with the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Paul?
Yes, I do, and please understand that my questions are not directed to a lack of trust in the work that you've done, because obviously you put a lot of time in, and it's very informative. But I do have some problems in trying to make a decision today on some of these issues without actually seeing the comparative analysis that you did with respect to other studies, the salary surveys. That's generally what we spend a lot of time with when we discuss salaries, when we are in the process of negotiation. And so it's on me that I don't have those, but being able to make that decision. But when you determine, for example, if I were to take a look at just one of these categories, let's just take recreation supervisor, which is at the top of page 42 and 54. How did you said that monthly salary is $6,267 and the hourly is $36.16. How many hours are these people rated at? Are these positions rated at? For example, is that 160 hours a month, which would be 40 times 4? How did you figure out how many hours they would work in order to get your hourly rate?
Okay, so hourly rate for all of our classifications, other than those that are in fire, are based on an annual 280-hour schedule. Or sorry, thank you. The 2080 schedule. That would be a great hours. But no, sorry, it's 2080 over the course of the year, and so then you can divide that, or you can divide the annual, which is an odd year, but you can multiply the monthly by 12, divide that by 2080, and that will give you the hourly rate.
Okay. It's not, if I were to take, let's say that, well, let's go down to part typist, which is on the top of page 43. I figured the monthly rate, the hours they work was 140, or which is 160 hours, and some of these rates I got are a lot higher than what's listed. And are we having these people, are all these positions actually working 2,080 hours a month?
No, for those that are part-time, no, that would be...
No, obviously part-time, but
Yeah.
all the full-time positions?
Yes.
Let's see. The other thing that I was confused on is you said there are currently 4 classifications on the current salary range that make below the 140 minimum wage rate. And then when you get to your actual mandated minimum wage increase on page 38 of 54, you say there are 36 positions impacted. Because I realize the mandated minimum wage increase is something that we have to do. There's no discretion involved in that. And so I want to know exactly what the impact is, because on one part you say there's 31, and another part you say there's 36.
I'm sorry, can you point out to me, just so that I'm caught up on your question?
Okay, look at page 36 of 54, which is 2-2. You say there are currently 4 classifications, approximately 31 positions on the current salary range that make below the new $14 minimum wage rate, right under the word discussion.
Yes.
You use 31 positions. And then on your chart, on the top of 2-4, page 38 of 54, you say there are 36 positions impacted. Is that discrepancy because 5 of those positions are not filled presently? Or is that just...
Yeah, no, just give me a moment because I'm trying to recall when we came up with the numbers and then my report. And I want to make sure that I'm providing an accurate answer. And I apologize, that was a good catch, because I'm looking at it and going, the 31 is actually inaccurate. When I wrote the report, in my initial draft I had 31, and then we redid the numbers, and I realized no, it was actually 36. And I can't recall why the difference when I put it together. So when you look at the discussion section, and it says in parentheses approximately 31 positions, I apologize, that should say 36 positions.
So 36 is
Yes.
what we should rely on in deciding the motion today.
Yeah.
Finally, what benefits do the part-time positions get what benefits does a full-time person get that a part-time person would not get?
Well, the main one would be retirement with PERS, although we do have a handful of part-timers that do get PERS, but there's a story behind that. But essentially, the part-timers get PARS, which is not going to be as good of a retirement benefit. There's also vacation that our full-timers get that our part-timers do not get. Also, our full-timers get more sick leave. Our part-timers only get 24 hours in the year. Insurance, there's short-term disability, medical insurance, thank you, Paul. I'm trying to recall anything else that I might be missing. I think for the most part that's it. There's some other discretionary benefits provided to employees, like options.
Okay. Thank you, Manager.
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Thank you. All of my questions have been answered.
I have no further questions as well. Do we have any questions or comments electronically?
I have not received any public comments, and nobody's requesting to speak.
Thank you. And I'd like to bring it back to council for discussion. Dr. Baum, do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I think we have to approve a mandated minimum wage increase. But beyond that, I don't believe I have sufficient information that has been made available to the public in order to assess the increase to avoid compaction issue and aligning part-time positions to full-time counterparts. There are benefits, obviously, that full-time people get that the part-time people do not. That's more of a policy and a substantive decision. But right now, the only part I can approve is the mandated minimum wage increase without going further into having the information available. And once again, it's not that I don't trust you, it's just that what's normally available has not been made available to me, and so I can't make that decision.
Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd Romney?
I appreciate the effort, as I said before, and I know you've done a lot of work in this regard. I also would definitely, and it's required, I believe, by state law that we go ahead with the minimum wage increases immediately. And I would defer to my colleagues as to their comfort about the other ones that you surveyed. I understand and appreciate the cities, but I too have to look and remember how they all fit together in terms of what we've surveyed for the last couple of times for salary purposes. So I think there's something strange, if I'm remembering correctly, about Sierra Madre and some of the other ones. So in terms of how they fit in. So I appreciate that, but I do have some similar concerns. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I'm comfortable with requesting further information. Thank you.
Thank you. I too am comfortable with the work of staff. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution NR-21-03 only to the extent that it mandates an increase in the minimum wage. It mandates the minimum wage increase.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Romney,
Yes.
Councilmember Top,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jankowski,
Yes.
Mayor Udi.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, affirmation of the continuance of the community engagement programming with an understanding of the budget impact. Would you please have a presentation from Director Paul Ford?
Good morning, Mayor Beauty and council members. The item before you requests an affirmation of continuing community engagement programming with an understanding of the budgetary impact. As you all know, the re-envisioning proposal shifted the city's recreational approach towards broader community building. This pivot would result in more community events, more engaging and relevant class offerings, and nimble pop-up programming for teens and adults. Unfortunately, the pandemic has turned the service of recreation upside down, as public health orders and other external factors have either restricted or prohibited the city from providing much-needed community engagement. This is a shared reality that municipalities are grappling with across the nation. The pandemic will soon enter its 11th month, and the need for community programming is greater than ever. As the CDC continues to limit physical interactions, as children remain in remote learning environments, and as teleworking continues, social isolation will undoubtedly grow. At this time, recreation revenues are at 5% and expenditures by less than 25% of budgeted mid-year benchmarks. These shortfalls speak to the inability to provide contract classes and robust community programming, all of which are outside of the city's control. Nevertheless, anticipated cost savings in the city's operating budget should backfill lost revenues without requiring an appropriation from the general fund reserve. Your recreation team is in the service of people. Over the past 6 months, they've unleashed their creativity to provide new and innovative community programming, all within some very restricted confines. For example, because of mass gathering restrictions, programming in lieu of the community's beloved 4th of July celebration energized hundreds of residents to patriotically decorate their homes and pursue their artistic talents. A first ever Halloween scavenger hunt attracted nearly 700 children and their families while also receiving favorable news coverage. Adding to that sense of community was a festive fall display and associated mayor's message provided by Councilmember Shepherd Romney, which reminded residents to show gratitude for the many blessings in our lives despite the pandemic. A new Veterans Day exhibit was unveiled at Lacey Park, allowing patrons to honor hometown heroes in a passive but engaging way. And 2 free Thanksgiving Day workouts, one for adults, the other for families, allowed residents with much needed engagement and exercise. Local older adults also experienced holiday cheer in December, as many continue to isolate themselves during the pandemic. Over 130 care packages were delivered throughout town, bringing smiles to many homebound residents. And those smiles continued as over 300 youth received a free book and cocoa kit, all in a successful attempt to further literacy during the winter break. Your recreation team has had a lot of fun providing reimagined programming for the community, which resonates with our collective purpose as public servants, to serve the community. We hope that you concur with our recommendation to continue with community engagement for the remaining fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask council if there are any questions of Mr. Toth. Do you have any questions?
I have no questions other than to congratulate you and the city manager and staff in general for being very flexible and nimble during a very difficult time. And there are a lot of people that have reached out to me and congratulated us on our efforts to, especially with respect to the seniors, to be flexible and provide that type of community engagement when it's most necessary.
Thank you. Dr. Wong, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any question. Thank you.
Ms. Shepherd-Romney?
I also want to thank you for taking over and jumping in and bringing to our city wonderful new programs and very thoughtful. I think you, just in a couple of months, reached out to literally over 1,000 seniors, families, children with these great programs, and it is the holiday season, but I know that you already have things in the works for the next couple of months, so I thank you and your department for that, because I know everybody was on board to try to improve the lives, let's say, of our residents, and even with things like the veterans and the drive around for the Halloween, the scavenger hunt, even outside the community. It got coverage and there were people benefiting in a very safe way from the efforts that you made. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I wanted to encourage you to see, for example, that Thanksgiving Day workout program where you had organized, the socially distanced. Lacey Park is huge, and I do get a lot of questions like, why can't we have circles where people can picnic and/or exercise, whether it's an organized activity or not? And I think I probably sent you something along the same lines, how they are doing that in some of other cities where they actually have designated all the time. So you know where you could sit, and you know that this is 6 feet away from another section, or whatever, 10, I don't know, whatever. So that there's some kind of, on the big field there, because it's not being used for sports, is there a way we can make Lacey Park safer and able to be used for whether it's an exercise class or just picnicking in the off hours, and really try to use that good public space that we have as maybe the temperatures get warmer again. I think there'll be a need even before. So I'm hoping you come up with something like that, and I know you already have a number of great programs planned for the spring. So I thank you and your department.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I have no questions, but I will have a number of comments when we get to discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
Question for me is, if we're, over by 380 on rec, within your purview of community services, how is the library doing? And are there savings there so that we can look at what a net impact might be in community services?
Unfortunately, I don't have the financials for the library, but last I saw, the library is pretty much tracking with its expenditures. They're actually a little, they're not at where they should be for expenditures. They're behind because
Well, it's a good thing to be behind on expenditures. And, one of the leading questions here is if you participated in the library board meeting this last week, they were behind on expenditures. But there were some comments by the board, shouldn't we be spending more since we have the budget to spend? So you as Director over Community Services, I hope you would tighten the faucet on the library, and so that we can look at the balance between library and rec to get closer to what the net impact would be. And the needed net impact is revenue minus expenses would be the net impact. Because I think those two departments tend to look at their expense budget and track to that, but they don't look at the revenue budget and what the net impact might be. I'd like to open it up for public comment. Do we have any comments from the digital world?
I have not received any public comments, and nobody is requesting to speak on this item.
Okay, then we'd like to bring it back to council for discussion. Dr. Wong, do you have any points you'd like to make?
No, I appreciate what your department does, especially during this pandemic time. And I think we really do need this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Ms. Shepherd-Romney?
No, I'm encouraged that it's been a success and everybody is delighted at the efforts that you've made. So I do not think this is a year where we're really going to have the income because of various classes obviously being canceled, obvious, but passport services, all those things that usually. So I think that we have to, in my view, accept that this is a community service and you've done a great job in including the community and being creative and supporting them with staff. And your staff is also been utilized by other city departments and is performing very valuable work. So I congratulate you and fully support that this funding is necessary to continue the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Toll.
You're here.
Okay, there you go. Vice Mayor?
Yes. I'd like to offer a few different comments. Brian, you already know that I'm nuts about the new flavor you have brought to the city, so I won't go on too long about that. I'm sorry, Director. And I think I've shared previously, but I may be the only council member that reads every single disbursement check that's written, or Paul's nodding his head, every month. And I see some pretty clever use of money that you have made, and I have discussed this with you, in an attempt to be extremely prudent during this next 6 months of the spending. There were a few things that were absolutely beautiful, but so was their cost, meaning not inexpensive. But you had this clever way of finding these bargain inflatables that seem to be the hit of the city. So it would be my hope that you would be able to continue to find things that are great value, and I am a huge proponent of bringing the city to the residents during COVID. And what has previously been said, our residents absolutely love it. But I would really like us to take a very careful financial eye to the expenditures and perhaps even explore if there might be some locals willing to make donations. I know on your Darling Valentine card offer that is out there right now, you are getting some PTA involvement. Perhaps there might be the opportunity there to get some donations or whatever. And I think, as you and I have discussed, people like getting things, and even little things, if they're quality, seem to be a big hit. And the last comment I'd like to make is, since you have staff in two departments, library and recreation, I hope that you will be able to perhaps work with both. We know the library is closed. We know all those employees, except for delivering the books outside and doing the virtual programs, are pretty much stuck inside. But maybe if you could shift some of the programs that Rec is now doing and get some library involvement. It was suggested to me, for example, again, going back to the lovely Valentine's concept, to have a big mailbox in front of the library where people could, place those Valentine cards, and oh, by the way, pick up your books. So trying to tie the two together as much as possible, because we know that it's going to be a while before we can come together in numbers, and what you're setting up now won't be just till the end of our fiscal year, but sadly it'll probably have to go a little bit beyond that. So I hope that you will, in addition to your new hat, John, another thinking cap, and I know you've got great staff, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I have no other comments. Is there a motion, please?
I move to affirm the Community Service Department's increased emphasis on community engagement and understand that the corresponding loss of revenue from other programming options that are unavailable due to COVID-19 will result in the operating budget absorbing approximately an additional $380,000 over the course of the fiscal year.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Long?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Downing?
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jacobowski?
Yes.
Mayor Healy?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
I'd like to move on to our final item, which is the 2021-22 budget overview and goal setting session. Can we please have the presentation from Community Engagement Manager follow?
Thank you. All right, so today we are officially kicking off the budget season with a goal-setting session, brainstorming session, I should say. After feedback from last year during the budget cycle and with conversations with our budget liaisons, we felt we had kind of moved past the priority initiative process for a few reasons. Last year, we learned that there were new projects that were added throughout the year for various reasons that didn't make it as a priority initiative, but that needed to be addressed. And as well, when we were going through the priority initiative process, I think we all kind of realized we struggled with some projects that maybe didn't seem like they rose to the level of priority initiative, but should have still been in the budget as a process improvement or a new program. So because of that, we decided this year to kind of be a little more flexible, still come together today and have a brainstorming session and goal setting session on what we get from you as kind of your goals and vision for the next budget cycle and fiscal year, whether it's budget related or not, to kind of set our framework as we come back and do our budgets for you. Our goal this year is to give you a work plan with our approved budgets that would hopefully solve the problem that we saw with priority initiatives and really give you a comprehensive work plan of each department. That way, as the year goes on, if new projects need to come in, we can really look to that document as the work plan of the department and see if anything needs to come off or what should be adjusted to address that.
So with that, today, this will be a little more free-flowing than the years past. We won't be doing any sticker dots today. We will just be kind of letting you lead the discussion on goals and visions for the year, still based on our critical success factors, the 8 we have there. After today's session, we will be doing a town hall on Monday night. We'll take the feedback we get today and kind of incorporate that into a town hall, but also allow our community to give us whatever ideas they have as well. And then from there, we'll have, throughout the month of February, an open online as a survey. So we'll do a community engagement effort to get as much feedback as we can. So with that said, Mayor Judy is going to lead us in this brainstorming session, and I will take notes accordingly. So here is for questions as well.
And kind of the flow and the process and the end in mind here is we are not going to vote on issues today. What we're going to do is surface what we think might be priorities for the next year. Staff then will take those priorities to the community, get some feedback, so that at a later session, we will shape those a little bit, and then that's when we'll be, voting and having, trying to determine what the priorities are. And I would also encourage staff, as you go through the process, think about what constraints you might have, because you only have so many hours, in a day. And I think, as you start to process this, you're going to have to come back and help us understand what those constraints are. We can understand what the financial constraints are because we can see the numbers in the budgets, but we can't see how many hours it might take to do different projects. So I think that to me is kind of an end in mind. So I guess the first question to council, as you look at these 8 priority initiatives, do they still resonate with you? Engaged and connected residents, effective, responsive, and effective city services, a safe community, well-maintained infrastructure, fiscally responsible and transparent, attractive complementary business districts, inviting and relevant city facilities, and beautiful preserved single-family neighborhoods. Are those still what resonate with council? Dr. Warren?
Well, I still think that we need to continue to do these, still process. I think that we should go out and do the survey first. Why don't we survey the residents and see what they think is necessary for the city?
Okay.
I think that would be a better customer service.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd-Roman, do you have any thoughts or comments when you look at those 8 priority initiatives?
The critical success factors, right?
Yes.
Because I was thinking the priority initiatives are more like standard.
I'm just sorry to interrupt here too, just in terms of the process. Amanda has a Word document going, so when we get to what we think priorities might be or things to consider, she will start taking notes and populate those different areas.
Right. But you had said priority initiatives, so
Right.
that's why I was confused as to what we were talking about, and I wanted to clarify. These seem fine as categories, and I would go with them because most of what I envisioned would fit within them. Thank you.
Mr. Dahl, do you think they still resonate with you?
Yes, they do. I find them very encompassing, and we can always find ways to fit something in there, and it keeps you moving your mind process in the right direction.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Just one that I may want to think about, a word change, a single word change. We currently have attractive complementary business district. Because of COVID, sadly, we have lost some of our business districts. So perhaps replacing it with a word like vibrant or something to suggest that we want to be proactive in refilling those buildings that are sadly becoming vacant. So vibrant is the only word that comes to mind at this point.
Okay. Any of these still resonate with me? Really open forum here when we think about engaged and connected residents. What do people think the priorities might be this next year? And for me, I would put in here a fully integrated marketing program, because I think we have a lot of different facets of the city between rec and library and tree ordinances and such, and supporting the local businesses, that we really need one integrated marketing program.
And that fits with what I think: communication.
Yeah.
And it's not just providing opportunities, but it's teaching people how to do it. Because we have, Zoom is not that hard. Internet is not that difficult. The Go app is not that difficult. I mean, these are great resources, but have we really taught our residents how to use them? And they might not have the availability to go out to a class, but we should really get people to understand, because we don't know how long this is going to last or continue. It may be for a while, but nonetheless, these type of opportunities to view a meeting are going to last forever. So we might as well teach our people how to use that.
Any other thoughts in this area? And I would include in that, think about your different age groups too, because a 30-year-old is different than an 80-year-old in terms of how they receive and process information.
May I bring one up?
Yes, please.
And this would certainly be later in the coming fiscal year, and it certainly would assist in engagement. Basically, our one meeting place in town is Lacey Park, but many of us know informally there's a different group of folks that meet by the clock next door to Starbucks. And it's a compacted area there, but since we own the property behind that going north on Sierra Madre, I've had some preliminary discussions with Director Cervantes on this. I think it could be very attractive and hopefully not something of a huge cost. And please correct me if I'm wrong on this, we own some of that asphalt area going against the building there, correct?
Correct.
So that if we could develop a true parklet that would be appropriate for all ages. Kids could come there after school, the early morning coffee, people could have a larger area to meet. We could have small evening, maybe even a vendor in the back where people could pick up a dinner and sit down outdoors, and that would fit both with our uncertain future and give us another place. And just to see what that might look like, I have had residents ask if there could be something more there than that concrete bench. And
Amanda, that might go more in the inviting and relevant city facilities?
Or the new vibrant
Or the new
business district.
okay.
I think
Is there general support to put that on the priority list?
It comes under multiple categories.
It does.
Copy, paste, paste.
I would not want to spend a lot of money on that. I think we have infrastructure issues across the town. We have beautiful parks. We have lots of areas where people, perhaps here in the new library, San Marino Center complex. So I personally would not support spending more money for a meeting area on Huntington Drive that I don't think was a success before. If you will, I'll finish. And we had tried that before that. If I recall correctly, the street was blocked off for a while, and it was not something that was well used by the community because that's just such a dangerous intersection. And I hate to even bring kids there. I'd rather have them walk on by and be in a better place, at a park or somewhere else.
Now, again, in terms of process here, this is brainstorming, so we're trying to get things on the list, and we'll discuss and prioritize, knock them off the list at a future meeting. Are there other priorities that you would like staff to consider for this next year?
Are we doing this anything?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I think our residents expect us to assess, repair, and upgrade our infrastructure. I know, I see Michael Hearn there. I know that we have a traffic study that's coming in, I think, sometime, and I think that needs to hopefully come and talk about this, gets to something that we had mentioned last year that's on this list that reminded me of the neighborhood or residential traffic calming. I think that's still a big issue. I mean, we cut down on traffic, but we still have people tearing down a number of our streets, and that's continuing. So I think we have to confront that. And also when I think about infrastructure, I'm thinking about the sewers and the stormwaters, those ugly projects like we can say about plumbing, but every so often you got to do it. And I think we've had assessments, so I was anxious to get the reports in so we could figure out how that might fit into our budgeting and a multi-year. So it's kind of, I don't know, we speak to it in a number of different ways. Last year we were already talking about it. I mean, 3 of us at least were talking about that. when we were elected, that's a big concern, and we've had sinkholes and other disasters to prove it.
So what I'm hearing is yes, continue the focus on infrastructure, and yes, continue the focus on public safety and traffic issues.
And I would add to that, I'd like to follow up on Director Cervantes' request about improving code enforcement staffing and consider whether part-time, full-time, volunteer, how we could get, some more eyes out there that make sense for him to utilize once COVID is over, even in the safety of cars, I guess the sooner the better. And also the other thing I wanted to bring up, to our last meeting, I think it was, Mr. Estrada, our urban forester, spoke about, in the past, we've had programs about the heritage and oak trees that are in the parkways, and that the city could come out, and if the residents cleared away sprinklers, for example, for the oak, they would provide mulch and help them landscape, or whether it's treatment for some of those trees that I would like to explore, or ask the Director Throne to work with Mr. Estrada to explore something there for our trees, particularly those that are kind of suffering along our parkways, because I think our median trees are, replaced, but they get enough of everything when we treat them right. But I'm not sure that the ones on the parkways, it's a haphazard. So a program to focus on those and preserve our trees.
And I thought the incentives for people to plant heritage trees was a good idea for last year. I also thought the facade improvement program for economic development was an interesting idea.
I think that those were great. And I know that some people, because there weren't that many, as you were speaking just now about the business facade, closed, and it was kind of a short window, and I think people weren't quite ready. But I think if we had a second year of that, you'd get some people who would like to fix up their building, and that benefits, to Vice Mayor Jacobowski's point, that benefits everybody, because, we have, again, a lot of old frontage that could be improved.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that continue for a second year.
It's early in its process, but the economic development little task force committee is doing some good work behind it to see, so I would think that should be something to be supported.
May I bring up one?
Please.
Under the beautiful preserved single-family neighborhoods, sorry, I'm in year 4 of trying this. Our design review guidelines are as old looking as my copy. They are now officially 22 years old. We had a work group that put this together way back when. We are seeing the incredible success we're having currently with the select work group that is in place in town. I think we need to update this document to include information that is now specific and required regarding landscaping. I think we need to quote some ordinances in this and even reference some fines. I certainly remember when I was on the Planning Commission asking designers if they had used this and referenced it, because it's such a major tool in decision making. And we just really need to have a current document. This is really old.
In that same regard, excuse me, when are we required to update the general plan? We should start the process of putting together a general plan, because that general plan has come back, not necessarily to haunt us, but people use that against us, especially when they appear on appeal. When are we required to update the general plan, and should we start building a team to do that?
There's no state mandate to update the general plan. There's a state mandate to update the housing element every 8 years. The safety element is being updated along with the housing element currently because the state requires it. But as far as the rest of the general plan that includes multiple elements, there's no mandate to update it. Now, the one that's currently available is a 2003 version, and I will say that there's an element of that that's much older, which is a circulation element, 1995. I would strongly suggest that we start to talk about the update to go along with some of the updated or modified or modern policies that we have going forward.
I agree. I do believe that should be a priority. Secondly, I think we should, with respect to safe community, we've got a program this. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Because I wanted to make a comment on that. I also wanted to bring up the general plan update, or I don't know whether that involves our zoning demarcations or overlays, and consider consider how that influences our community, because there is a lot of confusion about C1 and R1, and we really need to look at those problematic properties and talk about how to define those areas, and that involves even the conditional use permit process. So all those are involved, and I was thinking it should be a task force of, because it has to be kind of a lean group, two people from city council, the planning commissioner, chair, maybe vice chair, the DRC commissioner, chair, vice chair, both, obviously Director Cervantes and staff that's appropriate, but to try to get a working group that can meet and really, because it also influences a lot of our code and the different ordinances. So that has to be a very specific working group that could, and then they engage with the community, obviously, when there's documents to review. But so my suggestion is to do a specific group, not necessarily the one that's reviewing roof materials, but actually maybe that has a little bit more legal training or experience on some of those deciding bodies that we have our residents participating in. Sorry.
It's okay, and that's a great follow-up, because there is a playbook, what they did last time. Whether or not that's the playbook we want to use this time, I don't know, but if you go back and look at the general plan, you can see how they went through the operation, and so we don't have to reinvent the wheel with respect to that regard, unless there's some more modern elements that we have to take into consideration in developing the plan. With respect to public safety, we begin to use some more modern approaches to public safety. I think Flock has been a success. I believe that the fire department has new apparatus that help save lives. I would like perhaps a public safety committee to get together with the fire chief and the police chief and look at other innovations that have come through over the last couple of years in order to see whether we're up to date, whether there's additional apparatus out there that we could use that will be a success for our neighborhoods.
Good. Any other additions that people have on their mind?
Yes, as an alternate tree liaison, I think we need to be more engaged and connect with residents. For example, maybe we can have make some videos and tell them what trees they can cut and what topping is. Just keep them informed, and I just think that we need to have more engagement with the residents.
Good.
And then on top of that, another complaint I usually hear from residents is about power outage. That's probably out of our hands, but is there any way that we can do to make this situation better so that we don't hear a lot of power outage in our town? Thank you.
There are a couple of things that are, high on my list. Is one, I think we should get a long-term plan for the Stoneman property, address what that is. And another one high on my list would be for efficient services. I think we should really look hard with the school district to see where we might have complementary services. We both have landscape to take care of, we both have fleets to maintain. There might be some savings that would
In the ad
benefit.
hoc report,
The savings that would, benefit the school district and the city, since we're all the taxpayer paying for both of them.
I also had a discussion, and I don't know, we need to perhaps consider a long-term plan for the city to use about our infrastructure and the use of resources. And I think, for example, I know in Lacey Park, we still have issues regarding our sprinklers, but figure out if we're going to put in a new sprinkler system there or in certain sections to cut down on personnel that might have to hand water, et cetera. But how to do that, and maybe think about stormwater capture or what we need to do to make sustainability of the park or some of the other city resources, even this building, are we going to take into account better efficiency of windows and insulation? Because in the long term, things like water and energy costs are going to make this city a very burden the more we have our resources and facilities used, which is a good thing, but the cost will go up quite significantly. So I'd like to, whether you call it a green action plan or a city resource plan, I don't know what it is, but really just focused on not a citywide climate thing, but talk about making changes, that we do it in the most environmentally forward-thinking take that
Yeah,
into
but
consideration.
building on that comment along with Steve's with technology, there's a lot of technology that's happened in, irrigation and water savings and things that, it might be time to look at that and invest in it with a long-term view. I also think we need to look at the Public Works facility over at Lacey Park. That's only been there for 80 years or something like that. And there's, we need to be thinking about what a long-term plan is for that as well.
Right. And I don't know whether the police department, with the current improvements, what our assessment is for them not growing or using that facility as well. So, or even the fire department, I know they've been good about maintaining their building and making their own internal improvements, but I would like to hear about our public service personnel, make sure that they're all adequately housed, because they're there 24/7 in particular, and those are crucial things that we need to support them.
I probably should have said in the opening comments that this group and this staff has been together going into our 4th year now. And I think it's been very active and very progressive. So I think as we get here now, we want to continue a lot of the same momentum that we have and be respectful to our, our human assets and resources as well as our financial assets and resources as we plan for the next year.
Mayor, I was thinking the same thing yesterday. We had slightly less than 2 years in this current composition, and then there will be a minor or perhaps a major change in the council composition. And I feel very proud of all that we are accomplishing together. And we have shown that we are capable of being ambitious. So I hope we keep that in mind when we move forward. Purposeful, yet ambitious. Thanks.
Are there any other, priorities that come to mind? We're going to have a couple bites at this apple, but are there directionally anything we would like staff to consider as they go to the public to get input, feedback? Dr. Wong?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think we should survey the residents and see what they really want. That would probably help us.
Okay, good. Mr. Cole?
No, I agree with this process and reaching out to them and getting their ideas as well so that we can assess them as a body will be very helpful. I think the focus should be in these meetings, despite the fact that there might be 1 or 2 people that come and complain about things that we've done in the past. The focus should be what can we do in the future. That's important to set the stage when we get that.
Ms. Shepherd-Romney, do you have any other priorities you'd like to hop in there today?
No, I do have a question that may lead to the other thing I was concerned with, and this dovetails to Councilmember Wong's comment that the communication and resident outreach, I think that we made great progress in translating, for example, the city manager's weekly messages, things like that. I don't know if you felt that staff felt that there was other areas that needed additional funding to get things translated, particularly if we do go down the road of revising, for example, the design review guidelines or things like that. That is very important that because of our community, we need to reach out and
Trilingual.
I'm sorry, can you hear?
Translate trilingually also in Spanish.
Right. So I would like to see whether the translation services need to be improved and what areas you see as pressing, so we can make sure that we consider that for next year, because I think the community did appreciate the effort. And definitely during COVID, those were useful. And I appreciate the staff being on top of that, even when it was coming very quickly. And I hope we continue that pandemic or not.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have any other?
I think as we start to hear from residents, it'll make us say, and what about?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear what they think. I have nothing further at this time.
And there are a few things that, we're already working on, like, the operating dashboard, the financial reporting. I think we just continue to push on those as we move forward. Do we have any comments from the digital world?
I have not received any public comments, and nobody's requesting to speak on the vision.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
To Director John, we talked about in your office the CFAR, and I know it was, am I saying it right? Okay. See, I got the acronym wrong. I thought I saw it here. CAFR. So I got the F and the whatever. So can you explain to me and remind me again why that might be useful? Because I think that also, from my understanding, my takeaway was that might allow the city to then qualify for grants for certain works and things like that, because it makes us in a category of, well, you can explain it much better than I will struggle with. So please help me out here.
For CAFRs, or comprehensive annual financial reports, most of the entities that provide that document, basically it's a comprehensive financial report that provides more detail, so that, for instance, if, let's say that we were to go out for debt issuance, that many rating agencies that provide these bonds look and ask for CAFRs, so that gives them additional detail for the investors. So that's one document that's useful for CAFRs, but for us specifically here, the reason I would push for creation of a CAFR in the future is that it's more transparent. It provides the community and the council, of course, but in general, detailed information, more information than our annual financial statement that gets produced every year. On top of that, it also provides us a review by the GFOA, or the, I'm losing my regards to the acronym, but the governmental financial, so they provide the review and provide feedback regards to your comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR, and provide additional input where they might see areas of improvement for the city, for finances and in other areas. So that, I believe that just gives us more leverage to get additional input from other entities regards to looking into our CAFR as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Written communications, do we have any written communications or public writings for distribution?
I did not receive any written communications.
Thank you. Public comments, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak at this time in person or digitally?
I do not have any requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Future agenda items, are there any items that we'd like to get on the agenda in the future?
Yes, Mayor. May I?
Please.
I am the newly voted Los Angeles County Sanitation District alternate liaison, and I attended not only my first meeting, but just a phenomenal hour and a half online training. And Councilwoman, this ties into your suggestion about going green and being thoughtful with our environment and going forward. And I would really like to request that we have a presentation. I'm sure Director Throne would agree. They've got some of the most informed, bright people working there. And what I have learned about our solid and liquid waste is just mind-blowing. And you can now go down to South County and fill your car with biogas from some of the recycling that's been done. So I'd like for us to have a presentation to become better informed, even if we do put it out for a little bit in the future. I think we will all want to get on board. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like on the future agenda?
I've had a concern presently about, as I watch planning commission and design review, the use of artificial turf in our city for landscape plans, and I know this is comes. We don't specifically prohibit it. I know it will be a long time once we review and revise the design review guidelines, but I think it's more pressing than that, because it seems to be, I thought, when I moved here, up until recently, that we couldn't even employ that, you know. But there's nothing that precludes it in the present situation, and I don't know if that's something that we can get a recommendation to act on in the sooner than it would take to do some of these big picture changes, which we envision for next year.
Just a reminder, Mr. Mayor, you need 3 votes to put something on future agenda.
Oh, okay.
Unless you want to do it by mayoral fiat.
Okay.
You are welcome.
Okay. And then let's
also in your
go back to the presentation from the sanitation district. Can we have a roll call for those?
You just need a straw vote. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said the formal vote.
How many people would like a presentation from the sanitation district on a future agenda? Please raise your hand.
All right. Thank you much.
Okay. And then addressing.
All right, thank you much.
Artificial, okay. And then I have something I think we should be thinking about, and that's around sponsorship rights. Because I think at Lacey Park, there are opportunities maybe for sponsoring benches and Rose Arbor and such, and with the San Marino Center, there might be naming rights, and in the economic development, there might be naming rights, so I think we should be thoughtful about what that might look like.
You actually have an item coming up on your Friday, March agenda, no, sorry, Friday, February agenda that will be related to the Lacey Park issue, so you'll be able to wet your whistle.
And I was thinking a broader look at it so that we're balanced in how we're thinking about the value of a bench at Lacey Park versus in front of the fire station. How many people would like to see a discussion on sponsorship in the future? Okay. Anything else people might want to see in the future? Seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting after an hour and 36 minutes.